200 years ago, humanity stood before the Galactic Council, not as equals, but as criminals. The council hall was a massive structure floating in space, built of glass, metal, and light. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy filled the chamber. Tall beings with glowing eyes, insect-like species with armored shells, creatures made of vapor and energy, all had come to judge the humans. At the center of the room stood Earth's representative, Chancellor Miraholt. She wore the flag of Earth across her shoulders, but her voice trembled. "We ask for understanding," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "Yes, we have made mistakes, but we are learning. We want peace." High Chancellor Drexthaler, a tall, silver-skinned being with deep-set eyes, rose slowly from his seat. "Learning," he said, his voice cold and calm. "In the last decade, your people started 3 wars. You destroyed 2 colonies. You poisoned planets with greed." Miraholt lowered her head. She had no defense. The truth was bitter. Humanity had come to the stars too fast. They took without asking, built without limits, and fought when challenged. The council voted that day. The result was clear. Humans were to be exiled. No debate. No appeal. Earth would no longer be part of the galactic community. They called it containment for peace. But it was exile. Banishment. A slow death in the cold corners of space. Within a week, the council sent fleets to Earth. Humans were forced to evacuate. Billions died during the evacuation. Cities burned. The skies turned red. Mothers held their children as ships lifted off. Those who could escape did. The rest were left behind on a dying planet. The council gave them one direction to go, the exozone. The exozone was a forgotten part of the galaxy, dark, empty, and dangerous. No planets with breathable air. No stars nearby. It was where ships disappeared and signals never returned. But humans had no choice. Thousands of damaged ships carried what was left of humanity. Scientists, engineers, farmers, teachers, anyone who survived. They traveled for years through silent space. Many died on the way. Ships broke down. Oxygen ran out. But the ones who lived kept going. Among those survivors was a boy named James Carter. He was born in a cryopod aboard the ship Unity 5. His mother, a pilot, died giving birth. His father, a technician, raised him while repairing life support systems and scavenging parts from abandoned ships. James never saw Earth. His world was metal, wires, and the sound of engines. He grew up in darkness. But he listened. He listened to the old stories of green forests, blue oceans, cities with light, and skies with stars. And he listened to something else, anger. Not hate, but a quiet, strong anger. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that waits. His father told him, "They threw us away. But we are not broken. One day, we'll go back, not as beggars, but as builders." Over time, ships came together. Old vessels were joined into larger structures. Scientists made artificial environments. Children were born who never knew exile. They only knew survival. It took years to build the first proper colony, Nova Origin, on an asteroid belt deep in the exozone. Then another. Then more. Humanity didn't just survive. They adapted. They evolved. They built faster engines, smarter machines, stronger defenses. And they taught their children to never forget, but also never repeat the past. By the time James Carter turned 25, he was already commanding one of the largest fleets in human space. Calm, disciplined, and sharp. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. He stood on the bridge of his command ship, resolute, staring out at the stars. A voice came through the comm. "Commander Carter, the Council has made contact. They know we're still alive." He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He simply said, "Then it's time they see who we've become." Humanity had been banished, left to die. Instead, they built the most powerful empire the galaxy had never seen. The exozone had once been a graveyard of forgotten ships and dying stars. Now, it was the cradle of a new empire. Over 2 centuries, the scattered remains of humanity had united. What began as desperate survival turned into bold innovation. The people who had fled Earth became engineers, architects, builders of their own future. From the wreckage of old ships, they forged floating cities. From lifeless rocks, they mined resources and built foundries. From the silence of space, they created voices, signals, satellites, and a new identity. They called it the United Human Colonies. At its heart was Nova Origin, the first true capital. It wasn't a planet. It was a vast orbital ring built around a captured asteroid, powered by a small artificial sun at its core. Massive towers stretched into the void. Docks circled the ring like petals. Farms floated in sealed domes. Thousands of families lived and worked in balance, bound together by discipline, history, and a common cause. Commander James Carter stood at the edge of the central command platform, gazing at the blue glow of the artificial sun. It had been built in his father's time, during a period called the First Ascent, when humanity stopped surviving and started expanding. "Status report," he said calmly. A young officer, Lieutenant Wren, replied, "All fleets accounted for. Shipyards are ahead of schedule. The new generation of pulse drives has increased range by 22%. Also," he hesitated, "a Council scout probe was detected at Sector 94 Gamma. We intercepted and disabled it." James didn't react. "Any response?" "Not yet, sir. But we believe they know where we are now." James nodded. He had expected this moment. For years, they had expanded quietly, staying just beyond the Council's attention. But growth couldn't stay hidden forever. A decision had to be made, and he had already made it. In the great chamber of High Assembly, representatives from every human colony gathered. Some had never set foot on Earth. Others were the children of its last survivors. Yet they all knew what exile had cost them. James Carter stepped forward. He wore a simple black uniform with a silver crest, the symbol of unity, a star rising from a broken planet. He looked at them not as soldiers or politicians, but as the future. "It's time we stop hiding in the shadows," he said. "The Council banished us when we were divided, weak, and reckless. We are not the same species they cast out. We built this empire with our hands, our minds, and our blood. We don't seek revenge. We seek recognition." There were murmurs in the hall. James continued, "We will send an envoy to the Galactic Council. We will offer peace. We will show them who we are now." An older delegate stood. Her name was Marin Sol, a scientist who once worked on terraforming. "And if they reject us? If they fear us again?" James answered without hesitation. "Then they'll see we are no longer the ones who beg for acceptance. We are the ones who built something greater from nothing. And we will stand firm." The vote was unanimous. The next day, the diplomatic vessel Hopebound launched from Nova Origin, carrying 3 ambassadors, a record of the human journey, and an offer of peace. James watched the ship disappear into the stars. His expression was calm, but behind his eyes, years of preparation moved like currents beneath the surface. He returned to the Resolute, his flagship, a sleek, dark vessel equipped with advanced weapons, stealth systems, and next-generation pulse drives. It wasn't a ship of conquest. It was a ship of strength, ready to protect everything his people had built. He stood on the command deck as stars drifted by. "We give them a chance to see the truth," he said quietly to his first officer, Commander Sarolin. "But if they choose to see only a threat, we show them the strength of unity." Back on Nova Origin, children played under artificial skies. Workers constructed new ships. Scientists ran tests on deep space communication networks. Life was moving forward, with hope and purpose. And far away, in the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council received the human envoy. For the first time in 2 centuries, they looked upon the flag of Earth not as a warning, but as a sign of return. The silence that followed was heavy. But silence never lasts forever. The diplomatic vessel Hopebound arrived at the central space of the Galactic Council, a neutral system orbiting a white star, home to the ancient station known as Alindra. No weapons were allowed here. Only politics, alliances, and power. The Hopebound carried 3 human ambassadors. They wore simple black robes stitched with silver threads, the same crest of unity that James Carter wore on his uniform. They came unarmed, with calm voices and open hands. They expected caution from the Council. They did not expect silence. For 2 days, they were held in isolation aboard their ship. No contact, no message, no formal welcome. Alindra kept its gates shut. Guards watched silently. The Council, it seemed, was in no rush to receive them. Finally, on the 3rd day, the gates opened. The human envoys entered the Council chamber, a grand dome of light and air, surrounded by floating balconies, where each species had its place. The room was quiet when the humans entered. Many delegates looked down or away. A few whispered. Others simply stared. At the center, High Chancellor Drex Thalas sat in a high, curved throne of silver and black stone. His long hands were folded. His silver eyes were unreadable. He stood slowly and spoke. 200 years ago, your kind was judged. That judgment has not changed. The lead human ambassador, Elias Ward, stepped forward. His voice was steady. We did not come to challenge the past. We came to offer peace. A new beginning. We have grown. We have changed. The United Human Colonies seek friendship, trade, and mutual recognition. Drex raised one thin hand. You survived exile. That is clear. You have advanced faster than we expected. But peace is not built in secret. Trust is not earned in shadow. You built fleets, weapons, cities hidden from our sight. Elias replied, we had no choice. You left us with nothing but silence. Another council member, a gentle-voiced being from the Asteran species, spoke. Perhaps they deserve a hearing. Perhaps. Drex's voice cut in sharply. No. They return not as allies, but as a new threat. The council cannot, and will not, welcome back a people who once brought war to 5 systems. He turned to Elias. You came in peace. You will leave in silence. The humans were dismissed. They returned to their ship in silence, heads high but hearts heavy. Back in the exozone, news of the rejection reached Commander James Carter aboard the Resolute. He listened without showing emotion. His officers stood quietly around him, waiting for his response. They didn't even consider it, asked Commander Sora Lynn, anger in her voice. No, James said softly. They never meant to. Drex wanted to make a point. A new message came through. Urgent. One of the human patrol ships, the Sentinel Ray, had picked up hostile movement near a hidden border. 3 unknown ships, fast, unmarked, were moving toward the diplomatic route. Their signal was scrambled. Their purpose was clear. Assassination. James ordered the fleet into motion. The Resolute jumped first, followed by 2 escort cruisers and a stealth corvette. Within minutes, they intercepted the attackers just as they closed in on the Hopebound. A fierce battle broke out in deep space. James led from the front. His commands were sharp, precise. The Resolute moved like a predator, swift, silent, deadly. Within 20 minutes, the hostile ships were disabled. One was destroyed. The other 2 self-destructed. The Hopebound was safe. Barely. Inside its cabin, Elias Ward looked at the scorched walls and said quietly, they never wanted a treaty. They wanted to send a message. James spoke to him through the comlink. Message received. But we'll send one of our own. He ended the transmission and turned to his crew. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. If the council sees us as a threat, we'll show them what real strength looks like. But we won't start a war. Sara looked at him, confused. Then what do we do? James's eyes narrowed. We do what they fear most. We survive. We grow. And we speak to their people, directly. He knew that not every race in the council agreed with Drex. He had seen hesitation, doubt. The galaxy was watching. And now, the United Human Colonies would let them see the truth. Humanity was back. Not to beg. Not to conquer. But to claim their place. The attack on the Hopebound changed everything. No official declaration of war was given. No statement from the Galactic Council followed. The incident was erased from their public records. But the message was clear, humans were not welcome, and some within the Council were ready to use force to make sure they stayed forgotten. Commander James Carter stood at the front of the command deck aboard the Resolute. The stars outside the window shone cold and silent. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. All fleets are on standby, reported Commander Sorelin. Defensive nets have been activated around Nova Origin and all outlying colonies. James nodded. Good. And the message to our people? Broadcasted system-wide, she said. They know what happened. They're ready. James had expected rejection, but not an assassination attempt. That was more than politics. That was fear, and fear meant opportunity. The Council wants to silence us, he said, addressing his top commanders. But we won't respond with rage. We respond with control. We strike only when we must, and only to defend what we've built. He activated the central display. A map of Council-controlled space appeared, with dozens of blinking lights showing trade routes, patrol paths, and communication hubs. We've been studying them for years. We know their strengths and their blind spots. We don't attack them. We show them we can't be ignored. A plan took shape. Not one of conquest, but of precision. Over the next 2 weeks, the United Human Colonies launched a series of stealth operations. Small teams of elite pilots and data specialists slipped into Council systems. They hacked into public broadcast networks, placing messages of peace and proof of the Hopebound's attack into public view. In over a dozen Council worlds, people began to ask questions. Why had the humans returned? Why were they denied peace? Why were they being attacked without warning? One Council member, Delegate Sayla of the Varn species, publicly voiced her concern. I have seen the data, she said during a Council session. The humans came in peace. They offered alliance. We gave them silence and death. Is that justice? Drex Thaler responded with ice in his voice. They are builders of weapons. Their fleets grow stronger every day. They speak of peace, but their hands prepare for war. But not all believed him anymore. Back in the exozone, the humans continued their strategy. They didn't strike first. They didn't attack colonies or civilian transports. They disabled drones, intercepted surveillance probes, and broadcast truth. They also made allies quietly. The Varn, known for their advanced sensors and peaceful culture, began trading small amounts of crystal tech with the humans, under diplomatic secrecy. The Nolari, a neutral merchant race, opened a trade lane near human-controlled space. Every new link strengthened the humans' position and weakened Drex's grip. But not everyone in the United Human Colonies was satisfied with this slow, careful approach. On the orbital station Forge 7, a group of younger officers, those who had never known Earth or exile, met in secret. They believed James Carter's strategy was too cautious. "We have the power now," said Lieutenant Garan, one of the rising stars of the fleet. "We should use it. Strike their shipyards. Disable their supply lines. Make them fear us." Others agreed. But one voice spoke up, Ray Danner, a captain and war orphan. Her parents had died in the early days of exile. "You think war makes them listen? It doesn't. It makes them fight harder." Carter's right. The only way we win is by proving we're better than what they think. Back on the Resolute, James reviewed these growing tensions. He understood the pressure. He felt it too. Sora Lynn entered the room with a message. "We've intercepted a transmission," she said. "A new Council fleet is being assembled near the neutral zone. Not marked as an attack force, but they're armed." James stared at the display. "A warning." "Yes," she said. "And a challenge." James nodded slowly. "Then let's meet them." Quietly. Within hours, he assembled a small task force, 3 ships, cloaked and fast. They moved through the void without light or sound. When they reached the edge of the neutral zone, the Council fleet was their 20 ships, idle but ready. Their guns were charged. Their shields were up. James opened a secure channel. His message was brief. "We are not your enemy, but we will never bow again." He turned and left the channel open for them to decide how to respond. Then the humans left, fast and silent, without firing a shot. The message spread quickly among Council forces. The humans were no longer afraid. They had learned patience, strategy, and strength without bloodshed. But Drex Thaler was not finished. He watched from his tower on Alindra Core, surrounded by loyal guards and cold advisors. His plans stretched beyond secret fleets and public speeches. Deep within the Council's restricted vaults, a weapon was being rebuilt, one last solution to the human problem. And James Carter had no idea it was coming. The stars around Nova Origin shimmered with quiet energy. Human colonies expanded across the exozone like constellations of hope, built from steel and survival. Trade routes had grown. Communications with neutral races increased. Humanity, once exiled and forgotten, was now known and feared. But not all feared them with hatred. Some watched with interest, others with respect. In a dimly lit chamber aboard Alindra Core, High Chancellor Drex Thaler stood alone. Behind him, the curved windows overlooked the inner rings of the Council station. Ships moved quietly in and out of docking bays, each one bearing the crest of a species that had shaped the galaxy. Drex stared into the distance. "They should never have survived," he muttered. He turned and walked into a secured vault deep within the chamber. This place was older than the Council itself. In the center was a dark console, glowing with red runes. A voice responded as Drex placed his hand on the surface. "Access granted. Project Silent Flame. Reactivation in progress." Project Silent Flame had been designed over a century ago, a weapon built not to conquer, but to erase. It could destabilize space itself within a controlled area. Planets, fleets, entire systems could vanish without a trace. Drex didn't want a war. He wanted silence. Final silence. Far away, in the United Human Colonies, the first signs of this new threat had not yet appeared. But change was in the air. On the Resolute, Commander James Carter received a message from an unlikely source. Delegate Selah, the Varn Council member who had questioned Drex weeks ago. She had sent a coded signal, asking for a private meeting. The location, Miraxis Drift, a neutral mining world near the edge of Council territory. The place was lawless, full of smugglers and traders, but safe enough for a secret meeting. James arrived aboard a small, unmarked vessel with his chief intelligence officer, Tomas Wren. The meeting place was an abandoned outpost carved into a rocky canyon, hidden beneath the dust storms of the planet. Sayla was already there. She stood tall, her violet skin glowing faintly under the dim lights. Her eyes, large and crystalline, showed no fear, only purpose. "You took a risk coming here," James said. She answered calmly. "I took a bigger risk sending the message. If Drex finds out, I will be removed, or worse." James nodded. "Then let's speak plainly." She handed him a small data sphere. "Drex is activating a forbidden weapon. Something old, something lost. They call it Silent Flame. I don't know all its power, but I know it was banned by the first generation of Council founders." James turned the sphere in his hand. "Why now?" Sayla looked him in the eye. "Because he can't stop you. He can't defeat your fleets in open battle. And he won't risk more public doubt. So he's choosing silence. Final silence." Back aboard the Resolute, the data was examined by human scientists. The sphere contained partial blueprints, enough to confirm the weapon's purpose. It could destabilize entire gravitational fields, wiping colonies from existence with no warning and no debris. James called an emergency war council. Leaders from every human colony appeared on the screens around him. Some were calm, others angry. "This is a declaration of extermination," said Admiral Brack from the Forge Belt colonies. "We strike first. Take Alindra Core and end this before it begins." "No," said James. "We don't attack their homeworld. That makes us what they fear." "What's your plan then?" asked another. "Wait until they erase us." James leaned forward. "We don't wait. But we don't start a war, either. We take the weapon offline. Quietly. Permanently." He formed a task force. Only 5 ships. Fast, silent, and led by the best. Among them, Ghost Star, a stealth frigate. Falx, an infiltration corvette. Nova's Edge, a command cruiser in disguise. And with them, a team of engineers, pilots, and security specialists trained for deep space sabotage. At the head of this team, Captain Ray Danner, the same officer who once calmed rebellious voices back on Forge 7. She was smart, disciplined, and trusted by James completely. Their mission: infiltrate the secure vault on Alindra Core, find the Silent Flame reactor, and disable it permanently. The task force departed in silence. Before they left, James met with Ray Danner in private. "Don't chase glory," he said. "Chase survival. For all of us." She nodded. "We'll get it done." As the ships vanished into deep space, James returned to the bridge of the Resolute. He stared at a hologram of the galaxy, its bright core, its vast arms, its fragile peace. The game had changed. The Council's silence was no longer a rejection. It was a threat. And now, the future of humanity, and maybe the galaxy, rested in a handful of quiet ships, racing against time. The 5 ships of the human task force drifted silently through the blackness of space. Cloaked and shielded, they moved like ghosts toward the heart of the Galactic Council, Alindra Core. On board the stealth frigate Ghost Star, Captain Ray Danner stood beside her pilot as the station slowly came into view. Alindra Core floated above a blue gas giant, its long arms spinning like clockwork. It was beautiful and dangerous. Dozens of defense towers surrounded it. Any wrong move would bring destruction. "Final checks complete," said the pilot. "All systems green. Entry point aligned." "Begin silent approach," Ray ordered. "Let's bring this home." Deep inside the station, Project Silent Flame was nearly ready. The vault chamber hummed with low energy as coils of red light circled the weapon core. Engineers in black robes, loyal only to Drex Thaler, worked without pause. The weapon was unlike anything else in the galaxy. Once triggered, it would collapse space itself, destroying not just matter, but memory. It was meant for one target: Nova Origin. High Chancellor Drex Thaler stood outside the chamber, watching through reinforced glass. His face showed no emotion. "They would have remade the galaxy in their image," he whispered. "But now, we will erase that image forever." Behind him, a younger council member, Delegate Lyron Vox, hesitated. "High Chancellor, if we do this, we break every code, every agreement that holds this council together." Drex looked at him. "Then we rebuild the council with those who understand survival." The human task force reached the outer shield of Alindra Core. Ghost Star deployed 2 stealth drones, which hacked into the station's perimeter sensors. A moment later, a narrow gap opened, just wide enough. Send in the infiltration team, Ray said. Falks, the infiltration corvette, broke formation and slipped through the gap. Inside were 10 of the best operatives humanity had trained: engineers, fighters, slicers, and Ray herself. They landed in an old maintenance dock, long forgotten by the Council. The air was stale. The lights flickered, but the path was clear. They moved fast and quiet. Back on the Resolute, Commander James Carter watched the mission unfold from a secure channel. His face was hard. Focused. Updates, he asked. Falks has landed, Sora Lynn replied. No alarms triggered. If they stay on schedule, they'll reach the vault in 20 minutes. James stared at the screen. We have one shot. No second chances. Inside Alindra core, the infiltration team advanced through dark corridors. Ray led them with steady steps, eyes scanning every corner. Finally, they reached the outer vault. Reinforced doors, armed guards, security drones. They split into 2 teams. Team 1 hacked the power grid, using stolen codes from Sayla of the Varn. The lights flickered. Doors unlocked. Team 2 launched the attack. Fast, silent, precise. The guards went down before they could fire a shot. The drones were fried by EMP bursts. They breached the vault. Inside, the core of Project Silent Flame spun with terrible power, pulsing like a heartbeat made of light and danger. One mistake could wipe out the station. Or worse. Move, Ray shouted. Engineers rushed in, placing disruptors and overload dampeners at the core's foundation. Suddenly, alarms blared. The fallback shield activated. The Council had discovered them. Reinforcements flooded the vault, dozens of elite Council soldiers. Ray took cover behind a support beam and opened fire. Her team responded with perfect timing, holding the line while the engineers worked. 30 seconds, one of them yelled. A blast hit the wall beside Ray. She rolled, fired twice, and kept moving. Smoke filled the air. Shouts echoed through the chamber. Core destabilizing. Cover the left flank. 10 seconds, then silence. The lights died. The core shut down. Project Silent Flame was offline. Permanently. Back on the Resolute, James Carter stood still as the confirmation came through. Signal confirmed, Sora said. The core is neutralized. Ray's team is extracting. James closed his eyes. Relief passed through him, sharp and brief. Bring them home, he said. But the fight wasn't over. As the human ships pulled away, Drex Thaler made one last move. He ordered the Council Defense Fleet to intercept. Over 50 ships launched toward the exozone. James watched the readings. They want war, Sora said. James didn't blink. Then let's remind them why we survived exile. He activated a beacon. From across the exozone, dozens of human ships appeared, Titan-class cruisers, stealth frigates, defense drones, and orbital cannons from every colony. They didn't fire. They held position, united, unshaken. James opened a transmission, broadcasted on all Council frequencies. We asked for peace. You gave us silence. We asked for a place. You gave us threats. Now you see what we've built. We will not attack you. We will not destroy what we once begged to join. But we will not bow. Not now. Not ever. The Council fleet stopped. One by one, their ships powered down weapons. A single Council cruiser turned away. Then another. Then all of them. Drex Thaler stood alone in the Council tower, watching his plan fall apart. Later that day, a new vote was held within the Galactic Council. Drex was removed. The Silent Flame project was dismantled. And humanity was invited, finally, to return. Not as outcasts, but as equals. The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council had never been this full. Delegates from over 100 worlds stood or sat in silence, waiting. The usual echoes of political whispers, private arguments, and distant translations were gone. Today, the room held something different: respect, and maybe for the first time in generations, humility. At the center of the hall stood a man in a dark uniform with silver trim. His posture was calm, his expression steady. He did not raise his voice or look around for approval. Commander James Carter had come not to demand anything, but to speak for his people. He looked up at the curved balconies where the most powerful voices in the galaxy sat, where once they had judged and condemned his kind. I stand here today, James said, not as a soldier, but as a builder, a child of exile, a leader of survivors. He paused, letting his words settle. You all know our history. You made the decision to cast us out. And perhaps, in some strange way, that saved us. Because we learned to rely on each other, to grow, to earn what we were denied. Several council members nodded, listening closely. We came back not to seek revenge, but to offer a future, James continued. One built not on fear, but on understanding. Not on conquest, but on cooperation. He gestured to the delegation of human leaders behind him, scientists, engineers, historians, and diplomats. No weapons, no war banners. Just people. People who had survived the cold silence of space and turned it into life. James concluded, we are not perfect, but we have changed. And we believe that if we can come from the edge of nothing, then together, with all of you, we can build something greater than any of us imagined alone. There was a long silence. Then, from one of the upper tiers, a voice spoke clearly. I vote yes, said Delegate Sela of the Varn. Another followed. Yes, said the representative from the Nolari Trade Guild. More voices joined in, one by one. Some hesitant, some strong. Then, from the central control node, the result flashed in soft golden light. Motion passed, 84% approval. United Human Colonies granted full council membership. A quiet breath seemed to pass through the chamber. Then applause, scattered at first, then growing, until the room filled with sound. James Carter didn't smile for glory. He smiled for memory, for those lost in exile, for his father, who once told him, they threw us away, but we're not broken. Now the circle had closed. In the months that followed, changes rippled across the galaxy. The United Human Colonies opened embassies on council worlds. Human-built technologies were shared, including advanced pulse drives and resource systems that had never been seen beyond the exozone. Young humans enrolled in alien universities. Council citizens visited Nova Origin, amazed by what had been built from ruins. Trade grew. Cultural exchanges flourished. Suspicion still lingered in some places, but peace had taken root. And at the center of it all was James Carter. He refused the title of Supreme Chancellor or High Commander. Instead, he accepted the simpler role of Chief Ambassador. A voice, not a ruler. His words carried the weight of what humanity had become. On a quiet evening, James returned to Nova Origin. He stood on a high platform, watching children play under the artificial sky. Above him, the stars shone clearly. For once, they didn't feel distant. They felt connected. Sora Lynn joined him. It's done, she said softly. No, James replied. It's just beginning. From exile to empire. From silence to strength. From being cast out to leading the way forward. This was not just the end of a story. It was the start of a new one.